imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rock about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And take that away.
You know, that's my take. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal!
That's like a science thing, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Is a science thing. Is a science place. Is a scientific fact. We are all up in your face. It is time for
Protonic Reversal.
the one and only, baby. That's right. I'm gonna hit the game show correct button because it's relatively early and I'm got an entirely different energy. Hey. Welcome to another stay-at-home edition of Protonic Reversal. Thanks for tuning in. If you're tuning in live, thanks for downloading. If you're listening on a podcast, thanks for streaming, whatever. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. Thank you. Just thank you. Brian Walsby. Today. He's mostly known as a cartoonist these days, or as the Melvin's merch guy / flash artist, instant artist, flash artist. I don't know. That makes it sound like he's flashing people. He's definitely not flashing people. He makes these awesome parody album covers and cartoons in real time of the Melvin shows related to like in-jokes and humor, things along those lines. Really good, really interesting stuff. He also has a comic called Man-Child. He played in Polvo briefly. Fascinating guy, really cool. He's writing a book currently that is coming out whenever books can come out. I'm not entirely sure. We'll find out when all that happens. That's about self-employment, living life as an artist, etc., etc., etc. Stuff along those lines. So, fascinating dude. Looking forward to talking to him. We've actually talked about doing this for a really long time. I'm glad we're finally doing it. So, apparently it took a global pandemic to make that happen. But here we are. So, house cleaning, sure. We'll clean up while we're at it. Thanks, everybody, for the props on the more recent episodes. For sharing them around. That's how folks find out about the show, is when you let people know. So if you like what you hear, spread it around. That's always a nice thing to do, and we appreciate that. If you are wondering where your favorite episode is because it hasn't come out yet, just remember that you can join the Patreon, patreon.com/Protonic Reversal. You'll get everything very quickly. I'm not going to say immediately, but very quickly. And you'll have the episodes sooner than everyone else. You can already be tired of them by the time the general population actually listens to them. The news will already be broken. The epiphanies already coalesced into old news for you. So you can be ahead of the cool kids curve for the esoteria that is whatever this show covers. So, hey, if you're interested in that, it's $1 a month, $12 for the course of the year. And yeah, that's it. That's the pitch. You know, it's certainly not compulsory. We're catching up. The Toshi Kasai episode went up later today. Falco's going to be up to probably later today in my personal timeline, and Dwayne Dennison is going to be next, I believe. So we're catching up. We'll get there. But it also helps grow the show, helps support the show. So thanks for all that. I feel like I've fallen into doing these pitches, and I don't freaking like it. But it's fine. Like I said, it's housekeeping, right? So we're going to get into it with Brian Walsby. Looking forward to that. I want to make sure everyone is staying safe. So hope life's treating you okay. And if it's not, well, I hope things get better. So let's go. When we come back, we'll be here with Brian Walsby. Cool. All right, that was a little Shiny Beast action for you. Shiny Beast, they were a band from North Carolina, a band from Raleigh, I believe, if I remember correctly, and sort of, I don't know if you could call them math rock or not, but interesting band, sort of, well, you would know them if you were a fan of Manchild. So with that, I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Brian Walsby. Brian, welcome, man.
Hi, how you doing?
Good talking to you. We're finally doing it.
Is this live?
It is live, yeah.
Holy cow. I'm live on the internet radio podcast thing.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for asking me to talk to you.
Live on the internet. Yeah, it's funny because I was mentioning earlier that I've been talking about having you on for like a few years at this point, and it just didn't seem to work out. Like the timing never worked out, and then now it's like, okay, the timing's working out now, which...
There's a lot of free time that everybody has all of a sudden for whatever reason. I don't know why, but just being at home a lot lately. It's just the weirdest thing. And then everybody spontaneously seems like they're at home too.
Yeah, everyone suddenly has
all this time.
I don't understand.
I don't know. You think that there was like a pandemic or something that everybody alive right now have never ever lived through or something? It's something weird like that.
Very odd. Very odd situation. Maybe I should turn on the news.
It's a really odd situation. Well, how are you doing with all this? How are you doing with all this pandemic stuff?
I'm getting by. I'm sort of halfway maintaining sanity doing these shows because certainly can't tour, can't record, can't do any other things that give any sort of pleasure out of this banal, mediocre, misery marathon that is life. Yeah. That's been good. How about yourself?
It's weird. It's it's me and my partner Kristen, and we both have daughters, and I share mine with her mother, and she lives like up the street, so she's here half the time. And as far as Kristen's daughter, we actually rescued her from New Jersey from her father, like right before all this stuff, when we first started to hear the reports of everything. So we drove up to New Jersey, picked her up, and with her father's blessing said she's not safe here, and you just take her back here for an indefinite amount of time. And right before that happened, my mom was supposed to fly out here and stay with us, and we just talked on the phone. I think it was like the 7th. Like, she was supposed to come out March 10th. So March 7th, I remember I talked to her and said, you should probably stay there, my 75-year-old mother, because this seems, it's like, why take the chance? And then right when that happened, we found out about getting Belle, that's Kristen's daughter's name, and we spent the night in New Jersey when we got her, and it was right before the shit hit the fan, and we just barely got out of there. Less than a week later, all that stuff started to happen.
Yeah. Then suddenly there's bodies in like refrigerated trucks and things along those lines. It escalated very quickly.
Yeah, it's totally insane. And like, so we knew right away that it's like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to stay home, and hopefully we can self-police ourselves enough to be safe. And so far, everybody involved in this very small universe that I'm in, has done it. But yeah, it's weird. So now it's at the point where I'm at this point where I can't help but react, at least because I can't react in person to anybody. I'm even on social media even more, which is like a mixed blessing. But I gotta say that there's been like some, but I gotta say that like in some ways, it's always been a good thing and a tool that's helped me out a lot, for sure, but now it's like, I can talk to people can talk to each other, there's podcasts, there's video things, so I think everybody seems to have the right idea as far as trying to stay sane. So far, everything's fine. There's a day here and there where the enormity of what happens really just hits home, like, holy crap. But, like a lot of what I do, not much has really changed. I'm sort of an introverted person, and I don't really like being around a lot of people anyway, so it's not quite as bad for me as it would be for like an extroverted person. Right. But having said that, it's obviously nothing I really want to deal with, but at the same time, it's like, most people know what to do, and as we're seeing lately, a lot of people don't, or not a lot, but just enough. So it's just, the whole thing is very bizarre. That's for sure. Yeah,
so it's fascinating that now we're starting to see not just scenes that are like straight out of a zombie movie for people wanting things to open up, where it's just like weaponized certain type of mindset that is very much like, hey, what about me? I want to cut my hair. It's called stupidity. It's also like those people, and like I think I've done a really good job of not trying to like turn it into a political thing, because a pandemic doesn't care who you voted for. Pandemic is not a living thing that, this is like science. This is not politics, and if you don't believe it's science, then you're done. It's like, just look at what's going on with science and trust those people. And it's like, I've done a good job of, when I have to interact, of not mentioning or assuming that everybody involved that's an idiot, thinks one way. I think most people in general are just stupid, people can't even self-police themselves. People can't even, like when you go to a grocery store and you like have a shopping cart, what are you supposed to do without anybody telling you? When you're done, you put it back. How many people just can't do that? People just can't. They can't self-police themselves for any reason. I'm not trying to turn this chat into just me bitching about that stuff, but no,
it's been on my mind, and this is going on. It's like people are too dumb to self-police themselves, or they're just too selfish and stupid, and we're certainly seeing a lot of that now. It's like, my rights are being, everybody's rights are being...
Yeah, it's you. You're the only one having your
rights. You're not special.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you're not special. I'm dealing with, like, 2 small children, and it's not like everybody has to be a parent, and when you sign up to be a parent, you're a parent, but it's like, when I read about people, I'm so bored, it's like, dude, and they're childless, you're like, you can do whatever the fuck you want, shut up.
Yeah, the luxury of boredom.
The luxury of boredom. Yeah, it's a luxury problem. Anyway, so yeah, we're doing pretty okay, and people have been very kind and generous to me. People are still buying things that I draw and stuff, and I'm really surprised, and I really appreciate it. And it almost turns out that I might be in a slightly better situation as far as my whatever profession, which is just being self-employed, than certainly people that play instruments. I feel really weird about that, because like so much of what I do is tied into the universe of people playing instruments. But it's like, we've done a few things so far, and me and Charles from Bifocal, we've done a few T-shirts with people in this post-pandemic age, and the response to those, like we did a Napalm Death shirt the other day, and we did a Dinosaur Jr. shirt, and that response has been really, good. People want to help out, and like the Dinosaur Jr. shirt, at least, is half of the proceeds goes to the people that work for them and whatever, and that, so, hopefully we'll be able to do more of that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel pretty lucky that people are still willing to spend their hard-earned money during a situation like this, and I don't take it lightly. But yeah, the whole thing is just very weird, very strange, especially for people that play music and they can't go anywhere or tour or do whatever. It's rough, I'm sure a lot of people are having very tough days occasionally thinking about, are people going to even be able to gather?
Yeah.
So that's kind of scary, and I'm sure that's come up many times with anybody that plays in the band or plays music or records music or whatever.
Yeah, it's been pretty much a constant concern for this show with everyone I've talked to, and myself inclusive to that. And I think that's going to continue to be the case.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I don't know. I don't have any great way of summing it up, but so far everything's fine. So.
Well, and I think you hit on a few interesting points. First of all, stupidity doesn't have a political alignment, flat out. And
I don't think so. I mean, I've done a really good job of just keeping that name of the dude that's in. It's like I don't like him, but up until I don't like him either. But I don't like any of them. I don't trust, and I think the people that you should trust the least are the ones that appear to be on your side, your supposed side, more than the person that isn't. So with that as a gauge, I've just, there's certain things that people can be held accountable for, and then there's other things that people just, it's just easy to blame, this figurehead or that idiot or whatever. And I think they're all idiots. So I've done a pretty good job of not, don't politicize my pandemic, brother. I think people are just stupid. I mean,
in general, yeah, and I share that worldview that as much as I would like people to be critical thinking individuals who can,
it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's obviously not. People just want to be on TV. People just want to be on TV. Look, Mom, I'm on TV, man. Look what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm on TV. It's like who the fuck cares? Oh, it's just sorry, you caught me at a time where it's been very much on my mind these last couple of days. Just watching all the people like I gotta go to the beach. It's like,
do you?
What about the healthcare worker that has to try to save your stupid ass that you're could endanger? It's just crazy.
But spring break, man.
I mean, and spring break. But so I've done a good job of just I just think that it's just too easy to say, well, these people are all these type of people. Although I will say this, I think Trump finally has handled all this stuff really badly, and it's going to be really hard for all the much smarter people, not necessarily working for him, but, because I don't think everybody that voted for that person is an idiot.
No, of course not. I mean, some people just wanted to send a message, like blow it up. Some people, just didn't like the other person. Some, it's not, everyone doesn't vote or interact with a uniform action in mind. It's foolish to say.
Well, people are just so caught up in this is my team and that's your team. And it's like, man, I don't trust any politicians. And when all this stuff started, I just thought, I trust politicians about as much as I trust the general public. I'm going to stay home. I'm just going to stay put.
Yeah.
And if you want to go out there and do whatever, I guess that's your right, but I'm staying home because I don't trust.
Totally.
I don't trust anybody right now. This is not a situation where you can trust anybody.
I think you can trust people to make the worst possible decisions and not think of anything beyond what's immediately in front of them. I think it's actually worse than not being able to trust them. I think you can trust them to make bad decisions almost at this point. And
sure.
And that's just our environment, right? And again, that's because we don't value a culture that asks the right questions and supports critical thinking and things along those lines. And I find it frustrating personally that I'm constantly forced into a position of advocating for quote unquote leftist principles when it doesn't really sum up my worldview. It's like, no, I just want to have like some thought about this. Like, don't just like swallow what's like thrown at
critical,
you, right?
It's like critical thinking. Like, it's almost like saying you can't think about these issues in any other way than these two appointed ways in these two teams. Like, go team, and it's just like that's. And I it doesn't take a genius to see that that's how the people in power want. They want people to be pitted against each other. That's like the oldest trick in the book.
Well, and
go ahead, that has nothing to do with like studying politics for years and years. That's just human behavior. It's just like people are just usually they're not really into critical thinking about anything.
Yeah.
And like also like the world is like it's just not a life is tough, and the world's just these issues and things are like a lot more complex than people think they are initially, and things just aren't as black and white, and you can just discussing politics is like reading a maximum rock and roll back issue where everybody's talking about what punk rock is. Or
right.
After 30 or 40 years, well, punk rock means, and it's like, well, you know what? There's a lot about punk rock that I always fucking hated. I hated there's so much,
Well, sure. So yeah. Speaking to that earlier point, I think there's a former guest of the show, friend of the show, Rick Valentin from the Poster Children, said something incredibly smart, and it was like 6 years ago, something along those lines. I can't remember when it was, but he's talked about how one of the things that he found so frustrating with modern culture is it's like a culture of enforced radicalization, where you are just forced into like one box or the other, and there's no nuance allowed to any arguments or views, because it's like, well, you're either this team or that team. And I think that's not how humans work. That isn't how politics should work. And it's not how culture should work either. And I think that's an excellent analogy, because anyone that, for the younger listeners, maximum rock and roll is one of the definitional punk rock scenes. Yeah, like it's they had strict definitions of what and was not punk that often were filtered down through the viewpoints of Tim Yohannan and
right. But Tim was always a really nice guy to me. I mean, I'm an old fart talking about maximum rock and roll, and half the people reading this are like, "What are you talking about?"
You know what?
It was a very pivotal magazine at one time, and I'm older. I'm pretty sure I'm older than you, obviously. So back when I discovered that, it was a really important magazine. And they would have these letter sections, and this is before the internet, so you had to write letters to people. You had to actually sit down and write letters, and that weeded out a lot of people. Like, because if you have to go through the trouble of knee-jerk responding to something that you don't like, and you have to write a letter, you have to go through a lot of steps to make sure that you know what you're talking.
You have to really not like it. You have to really commit to it.
You have to really not like it. It's like crazy people writing letters to newspapers, and that are offended by something, and they gotta let the people know, I do not like this. But you have to write a letter. You gotta sit down. You gotta put it in an envelope. You gotta get a stamp. Then you gotta fucking mail it. So. Maximum Rock and Roll, their letter section, it was this endless discussion of trying to define what punk rock was and what it wasn't, and it's very similar to talking about politics. And politics were obviously very much wrapped up in a lot of aspects of punk rock back then and now, I guess. So it's just like, you got this endless diatribe of just, and after a while it's like, man, I don't need to really spend 45 years worrying about what somebody thinks punk rock is, or what somebody thinks a conservative is, or what somebody thinks a liberal is, or whatever. So I try to stay away from that. And this pandemic's just a great example of just like, there's a lot of factors there, but it's just a lot more complex than anybody really. Well, I can't say that everybody, but you know what I'm saying.
The most folks, the general populace. And unfortunately, American culture, world culture, doesn't crave nuance usually. Some folks do.
Oh no, nuance has been left behind a long time ago. So it's kind of a weird thing, but so we're definitely living in interesting times for sure.
So I want to talk to you a bit about. Well, first of all, I played a Shiny Beast track before I had you on, which.
Oh yeah, from the Boner record.
Yeah, and which is funny because I just had Mike Moraski on, and there's been a lot of Boner Records content on. I should have Tom Flynn on at some point, but
yeah, Tom's really funny.
His new band is great too. Antler Family. We played with them in Oakland. They were awesome. I really enjoyed it. Pleasant surprise.
Is that with the guy Sammy from Fang?
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think that's well, and Mia who runs the Uptown, and just like a bunch of folks that have been around for a while, but like a good example of a new band I should choose my words carefully, of seasoned.
No, it's okay, old guys,
older folks that are doing good work. And like
you might as well say it. You can't say youngsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Fresh up and young Tom Flynn, the young
up and coming Tom
Flynn.
Love you, Tom.
He played guitar and destroyed the handicap 40 years ago.
40 years. Oh my god.
Still in the game.
Yeah.
He's still in the game.
And doing cool stuff. Like it's it's really interesting. But so I played some Shiny Beast earlier, and it kind of reminded me because you were talking about the Sorting Hat of like Maximum Rock and Roll and stuff. And there was that whole like, God, it sounds so stupid, but there's that whole like, oh, is it math rock or is it not math rock? Like mindset that happened for
math rock. Sure. Shiny Beast, very first thing we recorded was by far the best thing in our up and down, almost non-existent career of 5 years. We were just cursed by making this incredible recording right off the bat, and then nothing we ever did came anywhere close. But I can't say for that recording and the initial input, we were very much influenced by it was me. It was this guy named David Sullivan that I was in a band with before called Willard that did nothing. And I think there was a Seattle Willard, actually, like a grungy sort of band that formed after all that stuff. They actually had a record out. We never did. It was like 90 or whatever. And then we broke up, and then David had all these great riffs, and that turned into, and they were kind of, for lack of a better word, they were kind of math rocky. But we took a huge influence from basically Penn Rawlings.
Yeah, the
from
mighty
Honor
Penn
Roll.
Rawlings of
because me and David loved Honor Roll, and we loved
Breadwinner.
We loved the band. Well, Breadwinner was good, but I actually liked the band that he had in between Butterglove. Butterglove were just this fucking amazing short-lived band.
That's like the one I don't know from them. So I should check that out.
Oh man, you should find it. Yeah, you can get it online. It's like they do a live 9-song recording, and it's like them playing these. It's really riffy, kind of mathy, but it's more. It's definitely not as complicated as Breadwinner. Breadwinner's great, but like I still like Honor Roll and Butterglove. Butterglove were like we stole from Butterglove a lot for the Shiny Beast. And then I think we saw Bastro one night, and that was around the time when David was stockpiling all these riffs. So basically everything we had came from being influenced by stuff that was, just not hardcore or not punk rock, and we really were influenced by Honor Roll, and they were always a big favorite of ours. And, I think we liked Bastro, and we liked, I think it was before, no, I guess it was around the same time as Spiraland and stuff, and I'm sure we liked that too, but it was, stuff like that, and the Jesus Lizard, I'm sure probably must have existed, but we also liked Scratch Acid, and we saw Scratch Acid when they were around the first time and stuff, so it was just kind of like stuff like that, and Black Flag, Latter-day Black Flag.
Right,
so
the more like academic Black Flag stuff.
Like Slippin' In, My War, mainly Slippin' In. And I know that one of the Shiny Beast songs was totally, we ripped off Steel Pole Bathtub, and I really like that first Steel Pole Bathtub.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. I can't think of the name, but I do know the one you're talking
Butterfly
about.
Love.
Yeah.
Butterfly Love. And of course, we like the Melvins too. And we like the Melvins too, obviously.
Yeah.
So pretty much all that stuff. And then there maybe the Minutemen, and I like the Tar Babies from Wisconsin.
Yep.
They were kind of this underappreciated band that were like this raging primitive hardcore band, and they turned into this sort of funky, but not in a, I don't know. They were always like touted as a band that, the Red Hot Chili Peppers got big, but it could have been the Tar Babies. And yeah, it could have been, but Tar Babies were just sort of better, I guess, and maybe weirder. But so anyway, all that stuff is what went into Shiny Beast. And like I said, unfortunately, the stuff we gave Tom Flynn was basically bound to be the best stuff we ever did. Nothing came close afterwards, unfortunately.
That's a hard problem to have, where you sort of top yourself off at the beginning, and then you're like, well, what now, guys?
Yeah, it kind of sucks, because we had some good songs afterwards, but we switched bass players, and the guy that we played with and wrote with initially was we just sort of didn't get along with him. He was a very talented all-around player, and some of his ideas were really good too, but we replaced him early on, and then we just settled into things, but we just never did anything that was as good. And we ended up doing a little bit of touring, and Polvo took us out, and we were friends with them, and we all liked Polvo very much. They were like the one band out of that whole Chapel Hill thing that I really, well, half of them were from Raleigh, actually, but I always liked Polvo very much, and so they helped us out and stuff.
Yeah, interesting, iconic band that sort of certainly made their own sound.
Yeah.
There's antecedents to what they did, but definitely.
Yeah, and they were called Math Rocky too, and I really don't understand that, because I don't really hear a lot of that. Oh, and Shudder to Think, they were kind of mathy.
Yeah, Shudder to Think was fantastic, and I think they didn't really get their due in a way, even though the one song was a huge hit and had that weird MTV video. I think they never got their due.
Extra French T-shirt. Yeah, Pony Express record. That record and the one Get Your Goat, those are great records, even though it's two different bands. So I'm sure we were influenced by them too. I
had Craig on the show actually, and awesome dude, like really, really like awesome guy, very, very good sense of self, and good sense of humor.
Yeah, he seems like a really interesting guy.
Yeah,
he seems like a really interesting guy. He's definitely quirky and talented, and I got some of his solo stuff, and it's good too. But yeah, Pony Express record, I think it was just too weird for people to really latch on to, but that's okay.
Well, and it starts off with Hit Licker, which is like, as far as the kickoff songs, hey man, I'm in, but like he was saying that the record company insisted on that, like, oh no, that's got to be the first song, and they're like, really? Okay. Which just goes to show you different times.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they tweaked it just enough to where, like, you know, like a lot of like super math rock stuff, I just, you know, my capacity for that. Oh, we had Confessor.
Confessor. Yeah.
Have you heard of Confessor?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like totally pioneering metal sort of guys that just did. They did this very original sound, and like, you know, after you hear, you know, we saw them like 30 times or whatever, because we were from Raleigh, and they were always great, really humble, cool guys, and they were enormous around here, playing this really, I guess math rock, you could say that, but they were influenced by Trouble, but it came out as this weird, well, you've heard it, it's just super complicated and weird, and then there's this guy singing on top of it, wailing away like Geddy Lee, which is really polarizing. So they were right. They were inadvertently very. Yeah, I mean, that's just the kind of thing where it's like,
no, it's accurate. It's just funny to talk about. Yeah,
but if you're not into that sort of thing, it's really alienating and probably not the kind of thing that you're going to be able to stomach. But they're about the most extreme math rocky stuff that I still could identify with. And then afterwards, when math rock was a real term, I was probably a little less interested, I guess.
Well, and those two of the dudes from Confessor got together with Penn and made Loincloth also, which is fucking awesome.
Great.
I mean, like, just like, as someone I'm very choosy about my quote unquote metal listening. Like, I thought that band was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I'll put good heavy metal up against anything, but there's not a lot. But the stuff that I think is really good is as good as anything. Like, you know, it's very vital and stuff. But yeah, I'm very choosy about metal.
Okay, so you've given a good indicator of the North Carolina sort of weird music scene and the contemporaries for Shiny Beast, things along those lines. I want to talk about the fact that you ended up on a Polvo record. You're on the one you're on Shapes.
I'm on Shapes, which was the most unpopular record they did for a long time. But after the band broke up for 10 years, well, this is what's really funny. Like, I wasn't on all that record, but I was on the record like maybe 6 songs, 7 songs, and like for some of it, Ash just played drums. They parted ways with their original drummer Eddie Watkins. Unfortunately, now deceased.
Yeah, R.I.P.
But Eddie was a really nice guy. They were all really nice guys, and like I just kind of came in because they asked me if I'd play drums, and I was like, yeah, that'd be great. And they talked about that there would be like a tour to support the record. And we did a record with Bob Weston, who I'm sure you know. And Bob was a very nice guy, but I think we didn't really, I don't know. It was a very piecemeal recording, and I think Bob was sort of occupied with other stuff that was going on in his life at that moment. And I'm not saying that to say that affected the record, but on the other Polvo records that he did with them, he gave Eddie this monster drum sound, an exploded drawing, and what's the other one?
Today's Active Lifestyles.
That's it, yeah. So he gets this monster drum sound, and then I got this, like, tinny sort of, like, music machine, not as good as music, just tinny, thin drum sound, and so it was kind of like, But, things happen. And then he was super nice or whatever, and it was fun to do. But then when the record came out, I guess there was too much rock on it, and the response was polarizing.
Right.
To say the least. But now people think it's like, oh, this is one of their best records. And
yeah, it's actually aged well. Exactly. Because I think that like one of the songs you're on, that Rock Post Rock song is a fantastic song. But I remember at the time, I thought to myself, like, oh, I think if this had come out under another band name, people might be more into it. But they were kind of just expecting, like...
Probably so. Well, that's a Dave song. Dave wrote the rock songs, and Ash wrote the weirder songs. And they were both good, but I kind of gravitated toward... Like, there was a super long song that we worked on that was just me trying to learn his stuff, and I couldn't quite get it. It's like a long instrumental.
Yeah.
And then there's another song called Everything in Flames that I thought was really good. And, but yeah, the tour was really good. We had a really, like, a month-long tour, and they were all, I can't say that, I was best friends with Polvo, but we got along fine. They were nice to me, and vice versa, and Ash was an interesting kind of guy. He's the kind of guy that you can sit in a room with him for, like, a hotel room or whatever for, like, 6 hours and not say anything, and it's okay. Yeah. It's okay to be quiet.
Yeah, you can have those spaces.
Yeah, you didn't feel like you had to talk. If nobody felt like talking, it was okay. There was nothing wrong, that kind of thing. And Dave and Steve were nice guys, and it was a successful tour. Then we came back. Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys died the day we came back. I remember that. Then we played like a couple of last shows to say, this is our most successful tour. Now we have to break up. Okay. So, I was just getting used to this. So they just broke up. And then 10 years later, they reformed and do what I thought was their best record ever, with my ex-roommate Brian Quast playing drums.
Oh, that's the one in Prism, right? Is that
Yeah,
that one's great.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a great record. And those guys were nice. And I was happy that they put out such a strong record after that 10 years later. And then I think life just kind of crept into their lives, and they all lived in different places, and I think the band is sort of no longer existing. I don't know that for sure, but I think they're done. And I think they reissued some of their older records recently. But yeah, the whole Polvo thing was great. And that record, it's all right. It could have been a lot better, but whatever. What can you do? Just go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very misunderstood record within a very befuddling band's pantheon. And I say that as a fan. Befuddling.
Yeah. Well, Dave made us learn all these like cover songs for that tour. Like we did the whitest version ever. And I usually hate people say white people ruin everything, because I'm white, whatever. But I will have to say that we did the whitest version ever of "Freedom" by Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, really?
I have tapes of it.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm on it, so I can't really, but like, man, you can't get any more white than Polvo doing "Freedom" by Jimi Hendrix. And he did it on the whole tour. And then we did like some Who songs, like we did Sparks and whatever. And I, obviously I can't play like that, so I just tried to do my version of it. And I think we learned some other covers too. We did we I had to learn a whole bunch of songs, so we would just rotate the set. But yeah, the whole Polvo thing was fun. I wish some of that live stuff would be out there more, because that's actually it sounds better than, we were better live on that tour than any part of Shapes, that's for sure. But Shapes is fine, and I'm proud to be a part of that, part of their legacy. It was very nice of them to ask me to play, and it was fun, and I had a good time, for sure.
Sure, and like I said, songs especially like, Rock Post Rock, I think have weathered the years well, and people that don't have that cultural
prejudice against rock music that are more indie rock kind of people.
Yeah, I was going to say cultural baggage of the time, but I guess that's just as succinct of a way of saying it. I appreciate it as a good tune, and then it's just like, and especially quote unquote the kids, when they listen to it, they're like, oh, this is great. What's the problem? And I think that's
well, kids.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, well, I was a kid, but I was always this nerdy, opinionated music nerd kid. So, like, I did my homework, but I was still a nerd. But you know how it usually is when kids shoot their mouth off about what they like, what they don't like.
I have no idea what you're talking about,
their mouth off. Yeah, I'm sure you don't. But then they go and investigate. Then they go and investigate things, and then they realize that they actually like what they criticize, because that always is what happens. Oh, it's actually really good. How many times have I done that? Oh, probably a million. For sure. So, that's kind of how it goes. But if that influenced people liking Shapes anymore, then sure, I'll take it.
Well, and it's fascinating that I think that, especially being an artifact of that time, that there was this push towards, whatever the hell post-rock was, right? That there was not really a lot of appetite for rock coming from a weirder place, unless it was an established entity already. And I think for whatever reason, again, Sorting Hat, Polvo had been put into weird art band category.
Yeah.
And they just, it rocked a little too hard, maybe, for people. I don't know.
I mean, like any genre of music that you attach something to, it's always the same. There's always a few of them that are like truly great. Then there's a bigger quality that are pretty good. And then there's a massive quality of stuff that just sucks. And any genre of music that's just how it is across the board, with whether it's called metal or indie rock and I think a lot of that stuff is just like music journalistic, like Rock 101 types, putting something on something, where at the time of you hearing it initially, you just thought, well, this is just really good, and then you weren't really bogged down with where it fit into anything or how you could classify it. And like a good example of that, I'm just thinking about this now, is like Husker Du's NRK record.
Yeah, where do you put
that record? Really, well, I think that's a great classic record. That's a great record by a great band that really spoke to me at the time, and I still think it's a great record, all of it, more or less. And as the years have gone by, people have attached whatever it is. Well, this record means this, and it's the gay Tommy or whatever, and it's like, okay, what I mean? They just like attached stuff to it that you would just never think about in a million years. At the time, I just thought it was a really great record by a great band, and now it's, the Rock 101 types usually take those kind of things and turn it into, whatever. Or take that Flint Spiderland record.
Of course.
When that record came out, they were done. Yeah. Nobody cared about them. They barely existed in the first place. Yeah. And they were this weird example of just people catching on to this record afterwards. And then they attach all the meaning of where it must fit in the world of music, because that's part of the job of a music fan, is to figure out weird theories behind why things exist and where they sit and what their place is. It's fun. I've done that millions of times. So that's a good example of that kind of thing for sure. But they just have to attach the meaning to it after the fact.
Totally, and it's something, and I think that's something that especially people that think too hard about music, of which I'm certainly in that category, often will do, is they'll ascribe meaning based on...
me too. I mean, believe me, I'm not saying that I do that a lot. Like, another example would be like I was, being a little bit older, my life was changed by the punk rock hardcore world of the early 80s,
Right.
And, but after a certain point, and this is just my take on it, that world was just getting burned. You know, like by 85, it was like, you know, there was a million bands that played billion miles an hour generic hardcore in their garage, and it just wasn't appealing anymore. And then, like, during that time, there were all these, a second wave of bands that weren't, obviously came out of that world, but weren't, you know, they were different. And some of those bands are like, you know, the guys in Dinosaur Jr. All those guys were hardcore guys that read Maximum Rock and Roll, or the band Honor Roll. They were all, you know, and they were basically doing this different sort of music that obviously wasn't punk rock or hardcore. And then all of a sudden there was like 100 bands like that, and there was too much exciting, great music around the latter part of the 80s that you couldn't fit into a box, that I couldn't ignore because it wasn't fast hardcore. There's a lot of really good bands, and then and that's when the term, like, indie rock used to be called college rock, like the Replacements. Like when the Replacements, when the Replacements Let It Be came out, suddenly there was college rock. Husker Du, they were, you know, they made Zen Arcade, and then this is just my opinion, they just never did anything as good anymore. And people say, you know, I understand that why people like New Day Rising so much, but you know, and then college rock, you know, at REM, they were college rock, and then all of a sudden there was this weird thing, and then it turned into indie rock for, you know. Yeah. But I guess the point being is, like, at the time there was just so much good stuff, and a lot of it just couldn't scratch acid. That's another good example.
Yep, one of my I had a homemade scratch acid shirt when I was in high school, so you're speaking my language.
Oh yeah, they came right after I moved out here. You know, like they came and played, and it was, you know, they were great. You know, but you know, you couldn't really. They were like a lot of other bands at that time. They were obviously moving away from this one thing that was kind of tired, and just started this whole other thing. And there wasn't really a label for it. And then right after that happened, college rock. You know, people still played music on the radio and whatever. So, you know, it was a real interesting time. In the punk rock hardcore world, it was like, I think there was, I'm saying like 86, 87, there was like, you know, the youth of today, and those guys are really nice, but like I was so not into it, it just sounded like a cartoon version of hardcore to me, or what I liked about hardcore, but they were really influential. You know, people like the Kermax, I never liked that stuff. So when all that stuff started getting super popular, that was sort of my exit, and then all this other stuff was sort of like the new beginning, I guess. Now, what that has to do with what we're talking about, I don't remember.
Well, no, but it's sure, but it's still very interesting, and I think that it's again, with meaning ascribed to events later on, it's always fascinating to hear the takes on folks that were there and to hear how it actually was. Because sometimes you get it right, like, you know, when I talked to Mike Moraski, who was like, you know, like a half generation ahead of me for the Bay Area weird music world. But what I realized is, like, oh no, I got it all right. I just missed a lot of it because I was too young, and then I get to basically get to nip at their heels and, and hear all the stories.
Yeah, but you know, there's a lot of stuff I wasn't able to see. You know, I missed out on a lot of stuff too. I mean, my first show was like in 1983, and there's a whole world of music, not just punk rock or weird music, but you know, there's a lot of stuff I would have liked to have seen, but I just, you know, I couldn't have seen it. I was too young or whatever.
It wasn't. So, that's fine. It used to upset me. Like years ago, I would, like when I was younger, I was like, oh, it sucks that I wasn't allowed in to see that because it wasn't all edition. And I used to get so pissed off about it. Now it's like I've seen so much awesome stuff that I was kind of looking at the wrong way. I was like, no, that was their time, and like you've had similar times, and like people would like kill for those experiences, and it's all okay. It's okay.
Right. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, like, I don't like going to see live music anymore, though. You know, like, I think there's like this, maybe because of, you know, like I spent 10 years working for the Melvins.
I was going to say, it's funny that it's funny you would say that when it's like what you do the vast majority of the time is you're at shows, but you're not going to see live music. You're going there to get punished by people asking banal minutia questions.
Well,
you know,
I'm going to work, and you know, I was grateful. It was a good thing to meet those guys. They've been friends for a long time. I'm super grateful of the opportunities I got. But it's a job, you know, and after, like, you know, it's been a long time, and I don't really have the personality for my job, really.
Yeah, because you're an introvert, really, at heart. So it's like, it's, you know.
Yeah. And like, like any band that plays music, I think everybody that ever has been in the band, and especially with me watching those guys and watching how they just keep on going, and, they're real smart. But watching those guys, or thinking of all the other people that are in bands and that's their job, and the people that work for them, it's like all those people that play music can leave. Like, because like I think everybody that plays in the band at that level is super grateful for being able to be there and having people show up year after year, and are really excited and really into it. But and this is me just saying this isn't me speaking for anybody else or anybody I've worked with or any other bands. It's just like you don't always want to meet the people that are really into you.
Right. Sometimes it's nice to have the distance.
It's usually a very awkward thing, and I've done it too. I've met some, when I was younger, I'd be like, so, and it's just an unfair, the person that you admire, they have an unfair advantage over you.
Yeah.
And, everybody's just a person, and I've seen so many examples of well-meaning, weird encounters, and it's like, I think people really mean well and stuff, but, you add alcohol to it, and you add a lack of social cues, and you just have a potentially big mess. And anybody that plays in the band could just go backstage or leave, but if you sell merch, you can't go anywhere. So the dynamic is really weird. But because of all that, and also just being old now, like I already saw all the good stuff I want to see, and I still love music as much as I ever have loved, and it's still very important. But like, I just don't have the patience to. And around here locally, if I go out and see a show, which doesn't happen too often, I have to really want to be there. And then I show up and I feel very, like my social awkwardness is totally hits the roof. Like I didn't used to feel so out of place, but now, I'm an old dude, so it's kind of like, it's just very awkward, and I just don't have the tolerance, and which is a far cry from when I was a kid, of course. Get to see the Minutemen in 1985. This is awesome. And there's a certain point where everything that you do is great, and everybody that you see is great, no matter how good or bad it is, because you're excited to be there.
Right.
But it's
part of your
hard.
experience. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but it's just hard to keep that up, and especially if you work for a exciting rock band, for a long time, that's gonna probably, that's only going to strengthen your resolve to not want to go, and I've had people say, well, it used to be such a big part of your life. What'd you do? Or, it's like, well, I don't know. I just changed. I sold all my records 20 years ago, and it was a great purging experience. And I don't knock people for having records or whatever, but it was a burden, to be honest. And now it's like, that's a part of my life that I already had. But that's not me saying that anybody else that still does that sucks, a fucking asshole. It's just like, I invested so much time into all that stuff and knowing about everybody and knowing about everything, going to a record store every day. I was totally into it. And then I was so into it that when I was not into it, I was really not into it. And it just seemed like I was done. So going to see live music certainly was a big part of that, how I was, I guess.
Well, and you cover a lot of these
Does that make
topics.
sense?
Absolutely. And you cover a lot of these topics in the comic book. In Manchild, you've taken a lot of these feelings and stories and sort of illustrated them out, which I find very interesting because it's a story that isn't generally told.
No.
It's very
have you read that? Well, have you read that Sam McPheeters book that you just did?
No, I really want to. I really would like to check that out because I think
Good.
he's a fascinating dude.
Yeah, he's really a good writer and he's funny, but also the whole book is like, there's a lot of, like, I'm not around people that I can talk about Discharge with or those old punk experiences or even just like being obsessed with certain bands that have nothing to do with punk rock, whatever. So like when you meet somebody like that or read something from somebody like that from your quote unquote tribe, it's kind of like, oh, this guy gets it,
Right.
and there's a lot of sentimentality there, but at the same time, his book is totally not sentimental at all. And a lot of those books about punk rock or some music and stuff, there's a lot of chest thumping and, there's a lot of glory, Well, the truth is most of the times there was no glory, and people like to pump up a reality that wasn't really there in the first place. So a lot of his book is like that. It's like there's no glory. Bad stuff happens, bad thoughts happen. He talks a lot about how, he never thought about it before, but he's like, this weird subculture of music actually attracted a lot of people with mental illness.
Yep.
And I thought about that, and I was like, that's absolutely right. There's I don't mean in a grand scheme sort of way, but yeah, there's a lot of crazy people that I remember. There's something about that that's true. So his whole book is like really great, and there's these funny essays about that kind of stuff. And I interviewed him for my upcoming book, and he gave me a very good interview, and that was like a year ago, and he told me about his new book and said, well, some of the stuff that you're talking about is sort of mirrors, not completely what I'm going to be doing, but some of that's in there. And then his book came out, and it was like really tremendous, So I definitely recommend it. It's a good book.
Did you say you'll be hearing from my lawyer, sir?
Well, the idea of even having a lawyer or being able to afford a lawyer is pretty funny off the bat.
Yeah. not exactly the thing that. Yeah.
You'll be hearing from my imaginary lawyer.
So
I have in my mind.
And I'd like to talk a little bit about before I do want to talk about the book, but I'd like to also talk a little bit more about the Man-Child comics, and that it's usually tends to be trends towards like one-page paneled stories, and they've mostly collected in a few books that are available for people to buy if people feel so inclined. If you're a comics person,
there's a couple that are still in print. Most of them were done by this company called Bifocal Media, which is ran by this friend of mine named Charles Cardello. We've worked together for like, I don't know when I met him, probably 15 years ago at this point. But he basically, back when there was a music industry and people would buy ads and stuff, we basically put together 4 books, and we got ads from all the record labels at the time, and that sort of paid for the book, and we had the distributor, and there's 2 of them left in print. And if you go to Bifocal Media, you can get those, but there's only 2 left. The other 2 are sold out. And then there was another one, the first book.
You're talking about editions, not actually like 2 copies left, right?
No, not 2 copies.
Okay, I was going to say.
Yeah. I know for a fact that there's only 2 copies left, so if you act fast after you hear this, you can get them.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably would have sold out by the end of that sentence, if that was the case.
Yeah, but, like, when the books first started coming out, it was right. I had stockpiled a lot of stuff before I had a daughter, because I had all this work and no home to put it all in. So when the first book came out, which is before Charles, that was the first place where a lot of it went. And then the books started to come out, and I'd work on them, and then, Willow was born, and that's probably why you don't really see a lot of comic book stories that last a long time, because I don't have the time to really do it. And also, like, a lot of the Man-Child stuff was me looking back, and I looked back so much for the first 2 or 3 books or 4 books. So when that happened, I just used up all the looking back memories. At least that's what I think at the time. And also being sort of an old fart out of touch, like a lot of the stuff I do is like really influenced by Mad Magazine. And Mad Magazine, to do a successful issue of Mad Magazine, you have to know a lot about what's going on around you and culture, movies, music. And I'm not really as in touch as I used to be, so I can't really make fun of like music stuff or whatever, like a Chunklet magazine sort of thing, where it's like some of it's funny, but some of it's not really, and it's not really funny. Like it's hearing about what a guest, the humor in making a guest list, that's just not really very funny. So I used up all those ideas, and I don't know what's going on now, so I can't really do that anymore. I don't have the time, so now I just do whatever I can, and they're usually like short things. But yeah, the navel-gazing stories about me and whatever, I think I've used all those up.
So what's interesting about that is for me, it's almost like punk rock Harvey Picar, in the fact that oftentimes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, because like Harvey, you know, like I was a latecomer to Harvey Picar, but I saw the movie that they made about him. And
American Splendor. Yeah,
that totally blew me away. You know, and you know, years before that, I saw the Crump movie, and that kind of blew me away because, you know, in the Crump movie, he's the normal person in his family, which is just nuts.
Yeah.
And then the Harvey Picar movie, there were so many parallels, and that's actually how I met Kristen. Is our meeting is a very Harvey Picar kind of story. It's really similar to his story with his life, which is really kind of weird. But I appreciate the comment. Or the compliment, I guess. Yeah,
and it's largely also, you know, the same way that in Harvey Picar's work, he can make just a story that like literally is just him talking about like, you know, feeling kind of like out of touch with the world or whatever, and like it's like, you know, a 2-page comic, and it's really fascinating and interesting. And the same thing's true with a lot of the Man-Child stuff. Even when you're talking about the same stuff that you've like talked about on this show, which is, you know, Seinfeld, like a comic book about nothing. It works, and it's entertaining, and that's something that a lot of people try to do, and not always pull off is probably the nicest way I can put that.
Well, you know, having a little bit of life experience helps, I guess, because I don't think I would have been smart enough to think of anything that that now comes easier with the benefit of like life experience and failure and triumphs, and thinking about, like, you know, sometimes I think about all the time that I wasted, but at the same time, all the time that I wasted has placed me here right now talking to you.
Right,
so, you know,
exactly.
everything has, like, you know, a purpose or a reason or whatever. You know, and like the upcoming book, you know, there's a big thread of just like what happens when people get older and they grow out of like something that they're associated with, but they still have to get by. Maybe they didn't get a job where, you know, they went to learn how to be a dentist or whatever. They, you know, what you have to like learn how to figure out these things on your own, and you're suddenly not a part of something that was once really important, but you gotta provide and keep going and still try to have meaning in your life or whatever. So there's definitely some of that in the upcoming book. So,
finding ways to make it sustainable, finding paths forward, or carving your own path forward in some cases to make it work.
Yeah, carving your own path. Yeah, and it's not easy, you know, and so that's been a bigger concern lately, you know, in the last 10 years, because, you know, I'm not somebody that's going out. You know, I have a kid, you know, I have a little family now, and it's like, you know, they come first, and even if they didn't come first, I just feel like, you know, it's just not as important to me to know everything and see everything, because the priorities have shifted. But that never would have been the case, like when I was fucking 25 years old. I can assure you that. You know,
sure.
You know, people just kind of like, you know, like the guy, the 55-year-old guy that wants to be the older father figure for the young kids in the scene, and they're like the Godfather. It's like, fuck that. Like, you know,
meanwhile, the kids are like, "Who's this old guy? What's his deal?"
He has a record collection to die for. What's his name? Old Man Crocus. Old Man Crocus has a record collection to die for. Sure, he's batshit crazy and pees in his pants and does that weird interpretive dance at the shows. But man, in between his nonstop drinking, if you go to his one-bedroom apartment, he has a record collection to fucking die for.
Well, totally.
I should use that.
Yeah, that's good. That is good. I thought that was a pre-existing bit. That's.
I just made it up.
I was gonna say it sounds like one of your comics. I think that would be a solid.
Old Man Crocus.
Yeah. Which is just a funny name in general. So, did you decide on a name for the book? Like, I know you were kind of workshopping a few things for a while.
I decided Self and Punishment was a good one, and a few people wrote me and said, "Why would you call it that?" And then I explained it, and they're like, "Okay." And it's kind of like, because being self-employed is like sort of punishment. You know, I mean, it kind of is trying to make things work. There's no security at all. You're living, you know, like that's one of the at least one of the okay things about, you know, the situation the world's in now. It's like, you know, I'm used to thinking like this now, you know, because like,
yeah, staying one step ahead of the spider, so to speak.
Yeah, you know, like just trying to stay one step ahead and just assuming that it's all going to go down the toilet any day, which is not a healthy way to live, but it does produce results, you know. So, yeah, so I decided it's going to be self-punishment, and I'm just going to stick with that. And there's like 30 or 40 interviews and a book company called Telekinesis out of Southern California, ran by a band named Mark Givens, is putting it out, and it's supposed to come out in September. And he's still, I checked it with him recently, and I still have, it's still going to happen, and he's excited.
Yeah, the nice thing about books is that you can still deal with books in quarantine. You can still read. You don't have to go to a place with 400 people to go read a book.
I can't go on the imaginary book tour, I guess, that I'm fantasizing over, but you know, it'll still come out, and I'll figure out a way of trying to drum up interest for it in this situation that we're all in. But I think it'll be pretty good.
Well, and you've got a bunch of people in it too that are interesting and have interesting stories and their own paths that they've carved out for themselves, and you're speaking with them, and I think that alone should be fascinating. From the excerpts I've seen, it looks really cool.
Well, you've talked, yeah. Well, thanks. Well, you've talked to some of those people for sure, obviously, and like so all the Melvins guys are in it, and you know, I've talked to other like Michelle Langevin from Voivod. I'm a big fan of both his music and his drumming and his artwork, and he's almost like this weird French-Canadian version of myself, but probably more successful. You know,
right, yeah.
He's a really nice guy, and he gave me a great interview like that, you know, because he's totally from my peer group, I guess, you know, so that was great. And almost, it's a good mixture of people that people already know about and people that maybe aren't as well known, but they're still doing exactly the same sort of thing, carving out, you know, something. And then there's a few other people that don't necessarily really fit in with it. Like, I have a friend of mine that has been associated with baseball for a long time. He was a pro ball player. His name is Scott Radinsky, and he's probably one of my oldest friends. We were in a band called Scared Straight when we were like children in City Valley, California. And of course, his path has nothing to do with being self-employed or whatever, but there's a lot of weird parallels, and he has such an interesting story, and he's such a good guy that it's like, well, I definitely want him to be in here, because, you know, how many retired pro ball players do you know that are still associated with baseball? Yeah,
that are available to speak to those experiences, because this is not a tale that's normally told, right? So that's fascinating.
Yeah, and he told me he still sings in the band called Pulley, and there's guys in that band that I've been friends with for like 30, 40 years too, back in Simi Valley. There's, you know, Sky Mike and all the other guys are pretty nice. So like Ventura County guys, and like, you know, like Scott still sings. I think he has more time to sing now. I think the baseball thing, I don't know exactly what's going on. I know he's still involved, but he has a little bit more time. So he's had these two dual identities for like 30 years where, you know, he plays baseball, and then on the off season, he plays in a band that's been around forever, and they just do a bunch of stuff in this short window, and people like them in that world that they're in, and you know, and we're still friends, and it's, you know, it's a great story. So that's another reason why I thought it'd be good to have them in there. So I think it'll be pretty good, you know.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I think the whole format of it's pretty cool, because you get a situation where you're asking, if not the same, similar style questions to people and getting a different breadth of field of answers. And I'm sure there are certain corollaries that are true amongst all the different people, but it's almost just as fascinating to see the contrast as well. And what I think of, maybe in a less focused way, is that if you remember that book The Onion did, The Tenacity of the Cockroach, where they just like talked to different, it was like collected interviews from like different people. Like they had the guy, Ren and Stimpy creator. I'm blanking out his name.
Right. I've never heard of that book, but that sounds really, interesting.
I'm not sure if it's still in print, but they would have they would have a bunch of just very like interesting creative people on, and it was because it was collected off of like interviews off of like the site and the newspaper, which to think about, there used to be a print version of The Onion. I remember like being excited to be in the Midwest on tour, and let's grab a copy of The Onion, right? But of course, now it's only an online thing.
Now but it's weird.
Yeah. So, but the idea being that the correlating factor with all the artists that they had in this, all these different conversations with different types of people in and around entertainment was, what their path was to get there. If it worked out, if it didn't work out, you Berkeley Breathe, Dr. Demento, like Henry Rollins, KRS-One, like all these types of people that,
varied people,
various different types of people.
To Dr. Demento as a kid, yeah.
And one of the things I really liked about that was because it showed all the differences and it showed all the different paths there were. And how I'm still blanking on Ren and Stimpy guy's name, but basically he blew it all up.
I don't know his name.
And he's brilliant. That dude is like hilarious and brilliant, but just like what he tells in the story is that he doesn't really play that well with others. It's what it comes down to, and that's fine because some artists don't, right? But it's interesting to have it all collected with those interviews, and I bet. What I'm getting around to with that is I bet your book's going to be the same way in the fact that you're going to find, even if there's similar paths, there's just by nature of the personalities and backgrounds of the people involved, you'll be able to learn a lot about those people, as well as the idea of what it means to carve out your own path and find it a way to be sustainable.
That's it. I'm trying to think of a good way of putting it. It's kind of like, everything I've ever done, like creatively, like at least drawing-wise, is tied in with music because I always loved music. So it was only natural that I would draw people that played in these bands, and I can actually draw them. And I like this band. I'm going to go pay tribute to them by drawing this. But with with music, it's like you're just looking for that kernel, that spark of something that makes you like it so much that you want to play it 5 times in a row because you can't believe that this is so good. I can't believe it. And that still happens, but it doesn't happen as much, obviously, whatever. But that kernel of that spark is also the kind of thing that really drove doing that book. Like all these people have done such great stuff, the Buzz and Dale and Michelle from Voivod and Lou Barlow. He gave me a great interview with a lot of really great stuff. William Duvall, who's now in Alice in Chains, but has this huge career before that of doing all kinds of stuff. And did Neon Christ in Atlanta, and he's a really unique, interesting person that's really talented. And he came out of that punk rock world too. And like all these people have provided this sort of spark that I kind of look for to be inspired to keep going on, because people need art and music and stuff. So the whole book is sort of a tribute to the people that are interviewed in it and their influence on me and their influence on the world, and how, when you hear something that you like a lot that changes your life, you're not trying to necessarily, if you try to play music, you're like, I'm going to beat that. You're just trying to be inspired by it to do something of your own that you like as much, or that's your own personal thing. So I think a lot of that, the upcoming book, just centers around people and that spark. Like Stephen McDonald, his interview was great, by the way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
he's.
Stephen's
I feel like we could have gone another hour and still not gotten everything. You know what I mean? He's so interesting.
Yeah, well, he's a very interesting guy, but he his motivation is him and his brother love music, and he just wants to rock out, and it's really pure. He's really their lives were changed by music in the same way that your life is changed by music, or my life, or Lee Barlow, or Buzz, or Jeff Pincus, or whoever else, that's going to be Lori Barbero, anybody else, that the music and the stuff around it changed our lives. So it's kind of like that's sort of the spark. So, and so it's almost like a tribute to that spark, and also to the idea of like having that spark influence you to carve out something of your own. And everybody in the book has carved out something of their own that's unique to them, and that's the whole gist of it. And I've let a few people read some of it, and they said, well, this book is actually going to be very inspiring to a lot of people. And, I hope, obviously I can't say, who the hell knows what's going to happen, but like, I think it's going to be good, and I hope it does, I can't, obviously I can't say, yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be million seller. But I think it's going to be interesting to the people that like that sort of thing. It's not going to be a lot of people, but I think the people that like it could probably get something out of it. I hope. So I guess we'll see.
Can you speak a little bit to how you ended up being the designated merch person for Melvin's, and then also, I can't believe we haven't discussed it yet, but I also want to talk about the drawings you do, the art you do, that are like the various spoofs and homages to different movies, to different like famous album covers, comics, etc., etc.
It's just Mad Magazine.
Yeah,
really. Well, I met those guys in 1986, like a few months after I moved out to the East Coast from Southern California. I'd read about Maxwell Rockville, and we just became friends and stayed in touch. And I used to actually go out and visit them when they restarted in San Francisco, like after they recorded Ozma and stuff. And nobody really liked them, and they were the feature, and I was very taken by them, and they were nice people. And then eventually the world started believing in the Melvins, and but at first people fucking hated. They did not like the Melvins at all, at all. There was a very small group of people that would put up with that kind of stuff, and they were in uncharted territory. It was like a new sheriff was in town. You had Black Flag, you had these bands and those bands, and then you had these guys, and eventually they found success and kept going. And then I think what happened was, it was right when they had the two drummers thing at first, and a friend of Buzz's named John Raymond, brother of another friend of his, a childhood friend, I think. They went to high school, Dan Raymond. I think John went out on a big tour for a senile animal and just didn't like it. I think they went on a 3-month tour. And then suddenly there was an opening because he wasn't going to do that anymore. And so I was invited to be a part of their road crew, but I didn't even know what I was going to be doing until I actually landed in Los Angeles. I had no idea what I was going to be doing. Was I going to be like setting up a drum set? Was I going to be doing that?
Right, you're just there to be auxiliary staff, and you're not exactly certain what the role is going to be at that point.
Oh yeah, I just didn't know, and it turned out I was going to be like selling merch, and that's just how it started. And that's it. And of course, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen now. Like at the end of every tour, I always think, well, that's going to be it. I'm not going to. I've thought that for 10 years, and who knows? We'll see. But it's been an interesting experience. And then like doing all those posters and stuff just kind of came from actually being a part of before I worked for them, I went out for a few weeks on the Senile Animal tour, and I was just helping out or getting in the way or being stupid, whatever. And then I just started drawing stuff on the back of these like posters, because that was when the poster stuff was ramping up. And I would just draw stupid, silly shit. And then I took suggestions from like Buzz and Dale, and that's what started it. And at first they were all really mean and just, with their encouragement, like just making fun of Kurt Cobain and stuff like that. And it took a very short amount of time to realize that they actually really and still like Kurt Cobain, but just they were making fun of what he had turned into, not him personally, but like the status he had and whatever.
The deification, the perception of, the larger than life perception. Yeah.
a perception of somebody that actually apparently was a really cool guy and had a really good sense of humor, so they're, it's that kind of thing. But yeah, and that's how all that stuff started. And then, Buzz kept letting me do it, and there you go. And
so what do you find? What do you find like moves the most? Like on the merch table, like what are folks? Because of course you do sell them at the merch table along with everything else, and you sell them online. What do you find people like engage with the most?
You mean as far as Melvin stuff, or stuff I draw?
for your art, for these sketches, for these lampoons?
Anything about grunge, anything about Kurt Cobain, because there's always going to be people that have the association.
Yeah.
With Nirvana. So, and since Nirvana's not there, the people that really like Nirvana have to go to the next closest thing. And there's many versions of the next closest thing, but the Melvins have always been to some of those people. Like, there's always some, like, on almost 10 years of shows, there's always some shows where the Vans will show up, and there's some wounded-looking Kurt Cobain, junkie-looking guy slumping against the wall outside the club 4 hours earlier before the band gets there, and they're holding a bunch of records and a pen, and they look like they're really dejected and sad, and they're usually fans of Nirvana, and they look like Kurt Cobain, and there's always somebody that looks like that almost every night. So there's a certain types of people, and anything about Nirvana is popular. I was having fun with like political people because that's it's low hanging fruit. But really almost anything. I've done some really obscure things, and even those have sold. But sometimes you just kind of miss the window of the target of your satire, and nobody's too interested. And you also don't want to get too smart. I've been told that a lot. You don't want to pitch it above your audience. Well, when you go see shows, you always hear people say, "Well, this band has stupid fans," and it's like, dude, every band has stupid. No matter how intelligent the band is, or whatever you think they are, every band has the same fans, more or less. There isn't there. At least that's been my experience with bands that play heavy, loud rock music. As long as people sell alcohol, it's the same audience.
Even if they're smart, they can definitely get dumb during the duration of the show, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against getting dumb. Some of the smartest stuff is dumb. Like the Ramones, their whole thing was we're dumb, but they're obviously not. They were obviously not dumb at all. But to act like you're that dumb, it's really smart.
Right.
So you know what I mean? So like some of the artwork, if like smoking pot's great. I mean, just like I'm high. Buzz smokes pot. It's like, yeah, that's funny. He must smoke a ton of pot. Oh yeah, he really does.
Oh yeah, he's all about it.
Yeah,
he's like welded to his bong.
It's just been 10 years of nonstop bong hits between everybody.
Exactly.
So usually the dumbest thing is the best thing. And if I get too clever, I know instantly, and I'll pay for it. Like, I think somebody in the Melvin's audience is going to want this Harry Nilsson parody. But having said that, I have sold Harry Nilsson parodies. For sure.
I thought that was fantastic, but I'm also a big Nilsson fan too. So hey.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like it's like doing who'd be the equivalent of Harry Nilsson? It'd be like doing like a Melvin Scott Walker poster,
Sparks.
Hey, I know you like Clutch. I know you like Clutch, but I bet you like Scott Walker too. So check this out.
Hey guys, like you. Hey, you in the Sleep T-shirt. Want this Jeff Buckley homage?
Exactly. And there's like I was talking earlier about the stereotypes of audience members. There's always like the dude with the Clutch T-shirt and the baseball hat backwards, and everybody has a full sleeve and that kind of thing, and they're muscle bound, and so there's those guys. There's all types of people. There's tons of a stereotypical rocker kind of audience, and that's just how it goes. So I would say the dumber it is, the better it usually is, and the more successful it is. If I get too clever, I know instantly, and I probably won't sell it. But if it's really dumb or making fun of something really obvious, that usually works. You know? Well, it's true, you know.
Just like music.
It really is the truth. Well, you know, like who was I thinking about the other day? I was thinking about Guns N' Roses. Mm-hmm. I was wasting time on the internet and selling stuff and getting packed up, and I was reading about, you know, like your entry point into whatever is your entry point. But like, I was reading somebody talk about how dangerous Guns N' Roses were and how, you know, like they were just a breath of fresh air and all. Well, you know, again, it just depends on their entry point. But I always thought Guns N' Roses just sounded like Aerosmith and had 2 good songs. And, you know, but I'm not criticizing their success or
sure.
think, you know, who cares? They're millionaires. I'm just this dude living in North Carolina. But, you know, it's just your entry point. And I was thinking about, like, man, so many people think that they're the most dangerous rock and roll band in the world because that's their entry point, and God bless them. You know.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, that's fine. Like, personally, I don't like Guns N' Roses at all. I find them to be incredibly annoying and overhyped, and I never was into it. But it's also like, it's okay to like different things. Like it's you know, I'm not gonna like trash someone for being like a big Guns N' Roses fan. It's like, okay, that's fine. It speaks to you and it's for you, and that's nice. Just don't be mystified when I don't like it.
Well, didn't Stephen McDonald say when he talked to you, he's like that sometimes so much of your identity is, especially when you're young, is rooted in, well, I'm mean, I like this, and if you like this or you like Guns N' Roses, then you're the enemy, and that's my identity, and you know that's almost what people do with, you know, political stuff sometimes. But you know how important it is.
It's back to the sorting hat almost, like, right? Yeah. We're
But I'm not saying I haven't done that 1,000 times. I have, but I'm just aware of it now. Whereas before I wouldn't be aware of it. But you know, it's really, you know, your opinions about those things at certain times seem so important. You know, that even now, if I read some stupid thing about Guns N' Roses, I can't help but have a knee-jerk reaction to it, even though I don't really care or have any ill will toward any, you know. It's just music, you know.
Yeah.
So
it's going to be okay. It's not going to negatively affect your life in any way. You're not being forced to listen to it, you know, hopefully.
Yeah, it's okay, buddy. You don't have to like this. It's fine. You know, and if millions of people like it, that's fine too. It'd be a boring world if we all liked the same thing.
Right. So back to the merch table stuff. The most people don't realize how grueling of a job working merch can be, and there's a few ways that I could phrase this, and some of them would be negative. But what I would like to do is phrase it this way: would you have any tips for fans of the Melvins or, you know, any bigger band? Merch table tips we're going to throw out there. It's not going to be tell me your worst story or tell me the things that are most annoying to you. It's going to be
the first thing that you should do is read. Now, if you don't know how to read, then you ask questions. You walk up and you read. Before you ask anything, just read. So that would be the first thing. The second thing would be, don't put your drinks on the counter on top of the merchandise, of the records and the books and the CDs and the special home printed silkscreen covers. That's the second thing. So read, learn how to read stuff first before you ask any questions. And then the third thing I think people need to realize is, and I don't know why this is a situation for rock venues and stuff, it's like, understand that I can't hear you. Okay, right off the bat, I can't hear you.
Right.
You know why I can't hear you? Because we're at a loud rock concert, and between the loud rock music, every fucking club across the country has to play loud rock music between the loud rock music.
I've never gotten that, and I don't like
it. So loud.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's so fucking weird. And it's so loud that people can't talk. It almost seems like that's by design. Like, I don't want to have a conversation with somebody that I'm friends with at a show. I just want to yell at their ear and hear like a third of what they're saying. So that's the other thing that these people just need to realize is I can't hear you. And if you walk up and you're 5 feet away and you open your mouth, I can't hear that. So those would be my first 3 things. Learn how to read, don't put your drink on the counter and know that I can't hear you. And that's a good starting point. So right there, that's a good starting point.
So this would be like a merch table etiquette kind of punch list, if you will.
Well, the other thing, and I have to accept some of the blame for this. You know, a lot of what I do is based out of being sarcastic and stuff. But unfortunately, a lot of times I can't recognize sarcasm when other people do it to me in real life. You know, and there's a certain part of younger culture, not even really younger, just sort of like that sort of hipster culture where everybody has to out sarcastic you at every turn.
Yeah.
So you can't just walk up and have a normal conversation. You have to, oh, that's really great. You know, it's like that Simpsons episode where, are you being sarcastic?
I don't even know anymore. Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know anymore, dude. And it's like, so there's a lot of that where it's like you can't even have like a pleasant exchange with somebody without thinking that it's some kind of race to see who's the most sarcastic or whatever, or and there's, thanks to the Melvins, there's been a good amount of people who have been turned on to what I do, and I'm grateful for that. But it also means that if they think I'm a certain way, then I'm going to get that sort of ultra sarcastic whatever. And then the other thing that people do, which I think is really funny, is they think if they say stuff that's bad or negative about the band, especially the records, like, oh, why is this record so much? I just will stare at them blankly and go, I don't know. Because they don't really want an explanation.
No,
these records are for a very small group of people at the show.
Yeah.
The people that want the stuff know they want the stuff and they get it. And most of the other people that don't know anything about it don't want it. And those are the people that come up and go, why is this? It's like, and they're dicks, It's like, so now I just, I've developed kind of a thick skin at times, but every once in a while the skin gives way and I still, will have the occasional. I've had some weird encounters with people, like I'm surprised I haven't been beat up yet. I'll have usually one or two very unpleasant experiences on every trip, and that's just how it goes, Some people are nice and some people are not. Most people are fine,
You almost want to. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
The people that aren't nice stand out more, unfortunately. And you think that there's a lot more of them than there are, but there's no shortage of uncomfortable, awkward encounters, and I'm awkward at times myself, So it's an interesting situation.
Yeah, I was going to say to your earlier point, you almost want to have a sign up that says maybe it's not for you, that they would also not read when it comes time for asking why something's too expensive, because that is such a thing that's hard. It's hard for people to grasp that the way bands have to operate now is, it's not just like, oh, there's one thing where it's a one size fits all. Everything out here is going to be of interest to everybody that comes up. Like, far from it. Everything is as niche as possible. Every band has to have practically an Etsy store.
Everybody had to reinvent what they're going to try to do to make money, since people don't, buy music anymore or whatever. And the Melvins certainly figured that out very early on, and they do a really good job with it. But it's as far as like the records and stuff and the boutique items, the people that like it and get it. But then a lot of people are just not interested in that kind of thing. But the people that like it really like it.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of some other etiquette tips. I don't know. Again, the majority of people are pretty cool, or at least neutral.
Yeah, so, fine. Like whatever. Not
it is what it is. I notice a lot of people come out and sign stuff after their set, and the Melvins don't do that. At least they haven't yet. Are they going to come out and sign stuff after the show? No, they never do that. What? No, they don't. Can you imagine some of those guys out there signing stuff?
Oh my God! Yeah, that's.
Yeah, just think about that for a second. What you know about those guys. How would that go over? Not really very well.
Yeah, I think you think this is an entirely different experience than it actually is. Like, you've seen the thing, and like you should be happy for that. And like they're not obligated to spend like 3 hours talking to people that have nothing to say and signing whatever obscure 7 inches or whatever.
Yeah. Well, like I imagine what I would be like if suddenly there was somebody I really admired and they were eating at a table in a restaurant and I happened to be there and I looked over and there's what's a good example of somebody that I would never bother? Nick Cave. Let's say Nick Cave is eating with his entourage. If I even had the guts to say anything, I would go up and just say, because everybody it's an unfair position, and somebody like that has heard everything complimentary about them forever. So I would if I couldn't help myself, I'd say, hey, keep up the good work. I'm a big fan. Actually, no, I wouldn't even say I'm a big fan, because that's what people say when they justify being a dick to you. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and now I'm going to say something terrible.
I can be an asshole to you because I'm a big fan of you.
Yeah.
Like, great. That's great. No, but, I would say, I don't know, keep up the good work, and then leave them alone. I wouldn't want him to sign anything. I wouldn't want anything more, just to let him know that I think he's done some stuff that has really inspired me, and I appreciate that your existence has put a certain amount of beauty in my life. So thank you very much for that, and I'm going to leave you alone now. So it'd be something like that.
Right. Because it's not like that sort of interaction isn't necessarily going to be unwelcome, but you don't have any way of knowing because there's a timeline going on that has nothing to do with you or your interests. And the reaction may not have anything to do with you as a person or what you have to say, but it's even worse if you have nothing to say and you just want to have an interaction, which seems to happen
all the time.
A lot,
like an interaction with no purpose, really. It's
like what are we...
what usually has happened on these tours is I have a certain amount of markers and I just keep them to myself because, hey, can I borrow that marker? No. Because what they want to do is it's after the show and there's somebody walking around and they want an autograph. But, will you sign this? Well, do you have a piece of paper? No. Do you have a pen? No. I'll borrow it. He said, no, I'm not giving you my pen because you're just going to walk off drunk with it afterwards and I'm, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I need
so, I understand the whole idea behind it because there's been times I've had to say stuff to people that I admired, but now I think I just would be too embarrassed about it, that if I had to say it, it would just be very short, and then I'd still feel stupid afterwards, So, you're meeting people that have done something that means so much to you. It's just an unfair advantage. You're not really meeting anybody. You're not really having a natural... It's just weird. The whole thing is weird, That's the other thing about, those tours. It's just weird watching the reactions and stuff, And you can spot the cool people a mile away. And the cool people are always the first people to leave before the show's over.
Yeah.
Because they gotta go home and do their cool things.
Right, exactly, yeah. They're not going to sit around looking to borrow markers necessarily to
borrow markers or inviting you to their house to go to drink some brewskis or whatever. It's weird. The whole mentality is just very strange, but it's understandable. And at the end of the day, everybody's grateful. Nobody has to pay. I always say this about stuff I do. Nobody has to pay any attention to anything I've ever done. And the fact that people do and are willing to give money is a huge compliment and something that I can't take lightly. So, it's great, because it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm sure all these people that play in bands feel the same way. It's just that meeting everybody's kind of scary.
Yeah. Certainly. And so you don't go out to shows much these days.
No.
I was established. I read the comics and I know, but do you ever play at all? Do you ever play drums anymore? Or?
I haven't. I miss it. I haven't played. The last band I was in, we just kind of canceled the band after just due to a lack of interest. We couldn't really.
Wow.
We did what I thought was, some good music, but, that doesn't really mean anything. And also, I'm just not really at the point in my life where I can really devote a whole lot of time to doing that, but I miss it. It's been at least a couple of years. I recorded some music with this friend of mine, Mike Dean, that I've known for a long time that plays in coercion and conformity. He knows how to record music and do all this stuff, and he had some ideas, I guess, and we did a bunch of that, but he's already in a bunch of bands, and now he's quarantined and stuff. But that was the only time I picked up drumsticks in like at least 2 years, like almost 2.5 years. I miss it, but I don't miss the feeling of having to think I have to be in a band. If that makes any sense.
No,
After 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, because that's also a youthful thing where it's like, now I got all these other priorities. I got like this small family, and I have to take care of that. I miss playing drums, but I don't miss being in the band. I don't even know what people do anymore to like be in a band that makes it successful enough to even pay your rent, or I have no idea. Do people even like? I just don't know. It's such a different world now that the idea of being 54 years old and it's inevitable that I'm going to play again, I'm sure. But I don't know. The whole idea about being in a band, that's why people, I notice when they get older and they've done a bunch of music, they call bands projects. They don't want to commit to saying it's a band because there's like a non-negative, you put your heart and soul to this stuff and then nobody cares. Or even worse, you're not any good and you don't know it.
Yeah.
Maybe there was that. And Davidians, the last band I was in, it was one of those things where like we broke up and our singer said, well, we were a good band. It's not our fault if nobody liked it. And I thought, that's a very good attitude to take in the face of failure,
Yeah, absolutely.
It just depends on what your motivation is, like for me, I always liked drums, and I still like playing drums, but I don't feel like I have to always play drums, I guess. And if I don't feel that way, if you're not driven by it, then I guess you shouldn't be doing it. But if the right person called me up and said, hey man, are you willing to drive here and practice with us? And if it was like people that I felt strongly enough about, like, let's say this would never happen, but let's say if the band Honor Roll reformed with everybody but their drummer and they wanted me to play drums.
Yeah.
I would do whatever it would take to drive to Richmond for, I would make time for that because I felt so strongly about that music that if that was going to happen, I would do it, no questions asked. But just to do something because I felt like I had to do it, I'm not so sure about that anymore.
Not your scene, yeah.
And also, it's just heartbreaking, and I'm like 30 years past having all my dreams crushed about music anyway. So it's kind of like if anything good did happen, like my idea of success and other people's ideas of success are two different things. Like, like when I interviewed Stephen McDonald, to me, Stephen McDonald is a successful guy. But there's a part of Stephen's personality, and I'm not trying to speak for him, but, like, he has, in the interview at least we did, he has been kind of a little self-conscious about things that didn't work out for Rick Cross.
Right.
And to me, those were still successes.
Yeah.
And, like, right now, he has the highest profile he's ever had in his life, and he's, like, a good dude. So, to me, what he's done, I would consider a total success. But to him, maybe because he was shooting a little higher or whatever he said, Bill Stevenson of the Descendants, Black Flag, I interviewed him. He gave me a great interview. He made me promise not to really share it on social media. But, his interview, sort of the same thing. He thinks, a part of him, again, not trying to speak for him, but my take was that he felt like he blew it. In a certain way with doing something, but to me,
not at all.
This is the guy that not at all. I mean, it's like
exactly.
Are you guys working at Taco Bell? No. Bill Stevenson records and engineers music, and he's a well-respected musician.
Sounds like he's got it sorted. Like he's been on like so many iconic records. He like has been like an influential, iconic drummer.
Oh yeah, he's a huge influence to me as a drummer, and but that's again my take on like what he's done is going to be different than what Bill might think about it or Steven or whatever. I know that they've had more success, maybe not monetarily, always, but just success in having been a part of these great acts and great bands and tours and recordings. Bill played on the First Descendants record, which is one of the greatest drumming tour de forces for an 18-year-old or 19-year-old that anyone's ever done. A super influential record. Steven, they did the Teen Babes record. That was like a hugely important record to a lot of people like me that maybe didn't know about things like David Bowie in 1984. I really didn't. Some people Buzz did, of course, but I wasn't. I wasn't up on like that, or or even the Stooges. I would read about the Stooges in Cream magazine, and when I finally got the first Stooges record in high school, I was really into, Killers by Iron Maiden. So the idea of like the same riff over and over with like 50 words in one song, just, I didn't get it, like the Teen Babes record was like sort of the introductory, almost like an introduction class to other young sort of ignorant punker people to check out this older music that would, they would end up checking out anyway, So that's very successful. I was a part of some stuff that was pretty cool, but nothing like that. So to me, when I interview those guys, I consider that to be a massive success. But it's a different kind of success, I guess.
Right. Depends on what your metrics for it are.
Right.
So Brian, I'm so glad that we got to do this. Especially after talking about it for so damn long.
This is great. I had a great time. Is this the kind of thing that you're going to be able to like repost and share? Yeah.
So it's all podcasted, and it goes to people who support the show, Patreons first. That like you spend $1 a month, you get all the episodes basically almost immediately, and then it's like probably about a week and a half turnaround at this point because we got so many of them because I've been doing so many of them.
That's cool. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I was gonna say. The nice thing about the quarantine times that we're in is that people are around to listen to stuff, and that's it's been nice that the show has been a social gathering point for people that cannot socially gather, and that's.
Have you been able to get some good feedback from? Are people grateful that you're doing this? Do you get some nice feedback?
Yeah, the show's probably grown more in the past 3 weeks than it has for the past 3 years, frankly.
That's awesome. And have you been able to make a tiny bit of money off people that are actually buying?
Yeah. I mean, whatever. It's not going to pay the rent or even like utility bills necessarily, but like people are willing. People are stepping up and throwing in money for on the Patreon, which I think there's a more incentive to do it when there's so many episodes coming out because people are like, I really want to hear Jerry Casale. I really want to hear Dwayne Dennison. It's like, well. It'll be up when it's up, and if you want to hear it now, you need to pony up $1. It's not that much, and considering how many people actually listen to the show, it's something that it makes sense that some folks would want to throw down for it. But it also, I realize asking someone to pay for something that they can also get for free if they just wait is something of a fool's errand. So for me, it's as much about engagement with the listening audience because it's such a passive medium. It's a passive medium that you put out there. You never know who's listening, what they're getting out of it, unless they just will come up to me at a show, frankly, where we're on tour, and like they'll just be like, "Hey, man, I really like the show," and I'm like, "Oh, wow, cool, thanks." And it's always like a shock to me because the interaction sort of ends when the show ends, and you never know how it's being perceived or enjoyed. So.
I know it's the same thing on those Melbourne tours. People come up and say some nice stuff, but other than that, I don't have any way of gauging, what people think about stuff in real life. You step away from like a Facebook comment,
right?
I don't really know.
Yeah, you have no way of knowing. So for me, the Patreon is as much just keeping the engagement in my mind that there are people that have made this a part of their life in whatever way. And that it keeps me focused on that. And then also, frankly, if you're impatient and you got, $12 a year to spend on something, you could do a lot worse,
Right. All right. Well, maybe I have to. The only person I've supported on Patreon now is like there's a guy from the band Propaganda that has a thing.
Oh, really? Yeah, and I know Creston from Harvey Milk's got one as well, but it's usually like. Usually the worst things ever. Like it's usually things I'm like, ugh, terrible for my taste. I should say that, but I know there's a few things out there.
Right. Like I like podcasts, and I like listening to people talk, and I like all that stuff. So, well, thanks again for thinking of me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so since you've listened to the show, there's a canned question that I usually do at the end of it, which is just, why do you do what you do?
Okay. Why do I do what I do? Because it's the only thing I know how to do that keeps me sane. That would be it.
It's important to stay sane, especially in these quarantine times that we live in.
Yes, very much so.
Brian, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Conan. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hearing if I came off intelligent or not.
You came off great, buddy.
Thank you.
Stay safe out there.
All right, you too, man.
All right, brother.
All right, bye.
Oh, there he goes. Let's hear some rock post rock. right. Fade it out, fucker. That's a Rock Post Rock by Polvo. Featuring none other than Mr. Brian Walsby.
Is this thing on?
On the drums. That's off of the Shapes record. We talked about that, amongst many other things. Many other things were spoken of.
Yeah.
Awesome dude. We have been talking about doing that for quite some time. Everything, maybe it's because I'm doing so many of these. I feel like I repeat myself constantly, and it's a pet peeve of mine. My dad does it, so apologies if that's actually happening. How can you not repeat yourself when you have the same outro and intro music, though? Maybe I'm overthinking this. Probably. Well, hey, overthink this. You've been listening to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Yet again, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you very much. Today's guest was Mr. Brian Walsby, cartoonist, merch guy, punk rock historian, former Polvo, shiny beast. You heard it. You heard. This was episode 164. Brian Walsby's on Facebook, Instagram. I don't remember if he's on Twitter. I think he's on Twitter. You can find his stuff at Bifocal Media. I think some of it's on Amazon, if you must. Yeah, whatever.
I've got 50,000 watts of power.
This has been another stay-at-home edition of Protonic Reversal. Thank you for listening to it. It airs on Radio No. Live. Podcast at radioneutron.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Patreon.com/Protonic Reversal if you want the episode sooner. $1 a month.
Turn sound into electricity.
Stay safe, everybody. And as always,
can you hear me now?
take it easy.
Out on Route 128, in the dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl! It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? leaves the transmitter, circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency,